Welcome to the Helsi podcast, where we invite you to invest in your well-being and unlock the secrets of vibrant health, peak performance, and wellness. Join us, Sebastian Mirau and Johannes Kettelhout, co-founders of Australia and New Zealand's leading wellness company, as we dive deep into the science, strategies, and stories that empower you to live your healthiest, happiest life. Whether you are a CEO, high achiever, entrepreneur, elite athlete, health enthusiast, scientist, or self-improvement seeker, together we will explore the cutting edge of biohacking techniques and holistic health practices with world-class experts that optimize your mind, body, and spirit. With each episode, you will walk away with practical and actionable steps to integrate in your daily life. Are you ready? Let's elevate your well-being.
Not people that try to do the wrong thing. It's just a frame around the profession and around their beliefs. There is just so much off that it actually doesn't support health necessarily, right?
No, it's not. We call it the healthcare system. It's not really what it is. It's a disease management system, a crisis management, and there's a need for it. But what we've done, it's humanity's fault. It's not the doctor's fault or the nurse's fault. And as you said, the system. So the system now is based upon all disorders are a lack of pills, not a bad lifestyle, a bad attitude. There's nothing to do. Just lacking pills. And so now the poor doctor goes to school 12 years, and she and he are really proficient at writing prescriptions. And now we need them when there's emergency operations, but we turned our lives over to them. We basically think that the doctor knows everything about everything, and they know very little about anything that has to do with health. They know about how to save you when you're dying, and God bless that. We need them.
Yeah. So do you see? Can you see hope of that being reversed through, I don't know what type of catalyst, or I always believe like, look, if processing power becomes so powerful that actually evidence is just obvious because computers can just go through the evidence and just say, look, there is a better way. And much points to also the responsibility of the patients or the person and things like that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So my current presentation I just did yesterday, I'll be doing around the United States, is actually on this. It's called Freedom. And we're in a very interesting time. And let me explain it in ways.
Yeah.
Most of the time that we Homo sapiens, humans, have been on Earth, we were nomadic. Now, that sounds pretty rough, but it was actually a wondrous time because we didn't need money. We didn't need credit cards. We didn't have homes. We didn't have limitations. We didn't have fences. We didn't have countries. We didn't have wars. We had abundance. So the way that you and I, as our species, came into this world for most of the time was everything we needed was available. We walked from place to place. We followed the seasons. Then all at once, somewhere in the 1600s, we got a little insecure. And we started to want to be agrarian. So now we want to put a fence up and we want to own land and we don't want to walk anymore. And it was still okay because we had organic soil. The soil was, but then, oh my God, we own the land. So let's create a country and let's create an army to protect us at this point. So now we created society, which society always sounds sophisticated. So you look at society and realize we're like savage, out of our minds. Now that stopped, and the damn British, back in 1840, the landlords basically were the only people who had money other than the rich aristocracy. Your family, my family, were peasants then. And so the landlords were the people who created taxation. So they had large amounts of land. They tax our families to live on there, but they were just more greedy than that. So they said, let's create product to sell to the peasants. And that's where the Industrial Revolution started. Now we start to really estrange ourselves from the norm. The norm was always on the earth, always on the soil, abundance, well-being, We don't have to fight. We don't have to have strife, etc. Now the Industrial Revolution. But the Americans did a great job robbing that from the British. Within 10 years, we became the industrial. In this country, if you study American history, it's all bullshit, just like German history and anything else. And they basically said, we are the greatest. We're the number one. Why we were, we had the richest soil. We didn't have that many people living here. So we had not only enough, soil to create food for us, we could sell it to Europe. We could sell it to South America. And then we had the industrial economics, and we found oil. So we became the rich, wealthy imperialist we are because of the Industrial Revolution we robbed from the British. Then what happens in the 20th century? These crazy people said, let's start telling people we don't have to sell them items. We don't have to sell, we're going to sell information. So then we went into something called the information age. Now, can you imagine that we conned the entire worldwide public to say the new economy is based on bullshit completely? and the best bullshitters with the best information made the most money. And this is where the stock market started to go crazy. People didn't believe in viable things anymore. Back 150 years ago, if you said to my grandfather, I want $100 from you, I'm going to sell you nothing, he would have popped you in the nose. He would have said, what are you, nuts? Today, we give nothing. We're giving money for nothing. Now, to get to your question, now we're in the time of consciousness. So we went to a point where we started to program computers, and always were arrogant enough, because we're very good at arrogance, Homo sapiens, to think computers will never be smarter than us, that we literally will control computers. They'll never be smarter. In 2017, something shocking happened. The programmed information into the computer had an opinion. And now it has a lot of opinions. So what we call artificial intelligence is now smarter than we are. So I recently was speaking to a professor friend of mine who teaches at two major American medical schools. And she said, we no longer teach the medical students anatomy, physiology, or biochemistry. I said, how can they be doctors? She said, soon all we'll need them for is to sign off, because AI is going to take over medicine. So will it change? Yes. How it will change? I'm not a sage, so I can't tell you, but it will change, and it will change for the better. Now, here's where I think the rest of humanity is. We're in an excellent time that we can no longer spend or waste our time on being the smartest man or woman in the room, because we'll never be. The goddamn machine in the room is smarter than we ever will be. It's like Einstein on steroids. So we have a choice, either to die and go down with a ship, because a lot of people are where, oh my God, the end of the world's coming, etc., or go back to where we started, where there's abundance, there's empathy, there's compassion, there's love, there's harmony, there's unity. Because we don't have to do the mundane thing of coming up with great concepts. We can actually be authentic creatures expressing love and compassion and unification. And I actually think this is the greatest opportunity that humanity has ever had since humanity began.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And that makes a lot of sense to me from the point of view that if abundance is there simply because mundane tasks, as you said, tasks that normally cost money, like energy, many other things as well, or just helping hands in the household even. I mean, if you think about robots, then the fight and flight goes away because you don't have to survive anymore. That's a given. That's a very different brain and a really different angle to actually live. And then if I think about, countries like Denmark, for example, who have had less working time in general, so there's much more recreational or community time, it seems to happen naturally that people want to donate their time or spend their time with something meaningful. So very different to coping mechanisms of like, I'll just plunk myself in front of Netflix for the rest of the day. I believe that comes from coping or of actually seeing no meaning in life. But I agree with you. I think if I look at that scenario, it can really be that we really swivel away from this fight and flight, just survive dog eat dog, to a opportunistic world where you can do all sorts of
I
different
mean,
things with all your free
so
time.
what you're saying, there's data behind this. So one of
Right.
the books that I'll finish later this year is called Quantum Union, speaks about this. But we know that Finland, Denmark, these countries that are in very dark, cold climates are the happiest people in the world because they have a civility, they have a sense of purpose, they have a sense of everything's okay, unlike countries like my country where people are desperate. People
Yep.
are always wanting more than they need because they don't have who they are. And let me repeat that again. When you don't have who you are, know who you are, you're not really that authentic human being that our ancestors were inherently. You didn't have to work at it. You didn't have to meditate,
Yep.
pray, and you were just that person at that point. So that's it. The other fact is that 80% of the global population now, when they ask them, you can only give one of two answers. Do you love your work or hate your work? 80% say they hate their work. So when you said correctly, you just correctly said something. You said the desperation that causes anxiety and fear and the fight and flight, and I don't like that man, and I don't like this person, and I don't like that politician. You know what you don't like, you just don't know what you like anymore, is because you don't not have a harmonious relationship with money. And then 90% of marriages are not happy. Over half of them break up, but 90% of people are living with somebody they're not happy. So imagine 80% of your time you're at a work you hate, 90% of the time you're with somebody you don't love.
Unbelievable.
So it's got to change, man. And I'm not only an optimist, I'm a believer that the human spirit, there always will be a Mahatma Gandhi, a Martin Luther King, a Mother Teresa. There will always be these people. And we don't think about the guy who had the biggest money. We think about the one who made the biggest changes and inspired us as human beings.
Agreed. Yes, and when I think about yourself, of course, I don't know you're close enough to know how your marriage exactly works, but you've been in a happy marriage for a long time,
Really happy.
and I believe, it's these 90% that you talk about. I'm pretty sure it's not that the compatibility overall is not there. It's more the mindset and maybe the space to actually really give that relationship the space and attention that it needs.
Well,
is
go
not
back to
there.
what I said. It's a very primary thing that we can't make too big or too small. If you don't know who you are, you want more than you need. So if you have two people who don't know who they are in a relationship, and God forbid they produce children who they're teaching not to know who they are, you always think stuff is going to make you happy. A bigger house, a bigger car, and you're never fulfilled because you don't have the transparent expression of self-realized happiness within you.
Yeah.
Two happy people. I mean, I'm totally in love with my wife. I become in love with her more every year. We've been together 45 years. And I say to her quite often, I think the world would be a radically different place if people loved each other. I mean, I want to hang out with her. I want to be friends with her. I want the whole world to feel what I'm feeling. When you're in love, you want love to be everywhere. And when you don't have that, I guess you want everyone to be miserable like you.
I had a phase where I looked at couples sort of more in the later stage in their life, and I would ask them, what's your secret? And there were a couple of answers, but one that was the most common one is like, know thyself. Like, do you actually know who you are? So it's exactly how you say, and I believe, I don't know how many opportunities there are really for children to really get to know that. And I mean, you can question school in general, but then, if you subscribe to school, is there actually curriculum that helps young individuals to find themselves and know who they are? And I believe we could do.
Well, I'm going to tell you a wonderful story. About 7-8 years ago, Anna Marie and I were invited to be the keynote speakers down in Athens. And I love Athens. I love the Greek people. They're childlike. They're joyous and happy and fun. And when I was listening to some of the other people that lectured, they were brilliant. I didn't want to speak. I kept saying, "Can I do shorter?" And they can speak longer. And one of the guys was a medical doctor who was also a brilliant historian on Hippocrates. And he taught me something I never read in all the 50 books I read on Hippocrates. He said when he was training young medical doctors, they would go outside with the patient in large open circular areas. And he said circular because you can't hide in corners. You can't limit thinking. So you're outside where you're touched by photons, things are circle, and there's no place to hide your emotions. And he said Hippocrates' greatest hero, greatest mentor was Socrates, who I think was the greatest philosopher in the world. And you just said the words. One of his great statements was, know thyself. So Hippocrates taught the physician to ask the patient, tell us who thou is. And until the patient was able to truly express it thoroughly, the doctor was not permitted to work with the patient. And he said, sometimes they'd go to sleep and come back. It would take 3 days. When the doctor evaluated that the person was truly transparently expressing herself or himself, then the doctor would work with him. And I said, that makes incredible sense to me. If you're working with somebody who doesn't know who they are, you're not working with who they are. And so how can you help them? How can you get them well? I mean, I've tried it since I learned that just a few years. I'm trying to do that here more and more all of the time. Have people express exactly why they're on the planet, what their purpose is. If you don't know that, well, how the heck can we improve your life? It's impossible. So you're right. Children are never told these things. We're told, be secure, make money, have security, have a house, have a job. You stick to the job. You know, what's that have to do with self-fulfillment, self-realization? What's that have to do with genuine joy?
Yeah. It might be a goal that someone else has put in your head, but it doesn't
most of the
fill you
time.
up. Yeah, pleasing the parents. Look, you have seen hundreds of thousands of people going through your institute over the decades, and when right, and of course attracted even more through your books and your lectures and your work globally, which absolutely amazing. Like the breadth of impact you had there, and you have seen a lot of different, I guess, terminal illnesses, but illnesses in general as well. So talking about know thyself, which is like to me like a psychological side of things. How many of the diseases can you track back to the mind and the psychological state and emotional issues versus, I don't know, if I think about it, maybe toxicity and that type of thing, of actually external factors that really have nothing to do with the mind that lives in that body?
The real answer is 100%. Now,
Yeah.
the variation on that, if you live next to a nuclear power plant, you can get cancer if it spills. But your emotional state could actually supersede that. So one of my biggest leaps, because I'm in my 70s now, and when I was growing up in New York, men just had to be able to be good cursors, good spitters, and nasty. And I was very proficient at all of those things. And so I was a machivo personified. and what happened is when Anna Marie and I were asked to direct the Institute in 1980 in Boston, where we came from. Not me, I was from New York, but the Institute. I was convinced that anyone who had emotional concerns was a weak person. Now, little did I know, because I wasn't wise enough and mature enough and grown up enough at that point, that I was blessed. I had great parents that loved me. I was supported. I had no real traumas in my life to speak about. I loved I played music as a kid. I loved that. I started to do this. I love this. I would pay to do what I've done in my whole life. And finally, I would watch people go on the diet I was putting them on. I know they were doing it 100%. They would do the treatments and therapies, and some of them died anyway. But one of the things I couldn't ignore anymore is the stories that these people would tell is unresolved issues. How they were abused as children, or how their husband walked out on them, or they were raped as a young girl. And so I had to change my idea on this and realize I had a privileged upbringing of love. And maybe not everyone in the world had that gift that I had. And I hired my first psychotherapist. And it was funny, I interviewed 14 people, and the least likely one was a 70-year-old woman who came in with a 1940 dress on and white gloves. And I kissed her hand, and she looked at me, who the hell is this guy? I didn't know what to do. I felt awkward.
Yeah.
You know? And I hired her, and I watched magic the first day. She would go into this room with people, and they'd transform in 1 hour. And so we've had psychotherapy since 1981 as a key part of what we do. Our comprehensive cancer program here is all about quantum biology, quantum physics, how your thought patterns, be it real or fantasy, determine your health outcome. And so we are giving people who are told they're going to die here at the Institute. Now, we also use this on the Olympic athletes that come here. Remember, the Williams sisters are on this. The top tennis player in the world in history is on this now. Some of the top people that you know, actors and actresses, are coming here and doing this. So we use the same approach, that it's your attitudinal competence that determines your biological outcome. Now, you have to eat a particular way, because once you have a level of awareness and consciousness of what food is, it's a fuel, it's not tasty or social, all this crap we make it. It's impossible to come down off the ladder and eat something inferior that's going to make you less aware. So, of course, it's a living, organic, plant-based diet. But that's not enough. If you could sit on your little fat or little skinny ass and watch Netflix all day long, you're not going to be healthy. So you've got to move and exercise. Why? Because I say so. Remember, as nomads, we never stopped exercising. As agrarians, we have to go to gyms. Farmers lifted weights. Farmers did aerobic. Farmers did stretching 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. They didn't go to gym. So our body was programmed evolutionarily to do movement, to do exercise, to eat fresh, to eat plant, eat organic. It's sort of ironic that we have to have money now not to poison ourselves. So you have to get Bioland food. You have to be wealthy to get Bioland food. The rest of your suckers, they can die from the poison. You know, why do we pay more money when the food has less on it? We should actually say, no, the poison food has poison on it. Pay more for that one. But this is a world we're in. So yes, it's a combination of things. But what you said, I'll go back to your original question. What percentage is psychological? It's 100%. Because we tell people here, you've got to change your mind before you change your diet and change your lifestyle. You don't change your mind, you're going to permanently do this. You're going to slip away, find bullshit, get on and find Dr. Schmuck from the University of Stupidia who's going to tell you fish is good, and you're going to be on that the next day. This is why you have a very short attention span in Western cultures. That people, even though they heal themselves of disease, I'm going to watch this. 40% of the people who scientifically have healed themselves of disease will eventually get sick. And the conversation I'm going to have with them is, are you, oh, well, no, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. I just, it's all bullshit, because they forget how they healed. And it's psychological and spiritual first.
Yeah. And I think it's I would hope that in future, if you would have some algorithm that goes through the evidence impartially and just says, look, there are so many stories, uncountable stories of, like, I don't know the person's name, but the guy who got this new drug. He had cancer, he got the new drug, and his tumors shrinked instantly when he took the drug. Then he found out it was actually placebo, it wasn't right, or something wasn't quite right with the drug. 2 humors came back, and I think he repeated it one more time, and then eventually he died. And there's so many stories like that. I'm sure you see this almost on a daily basis.
All the time.
If people actually address that. So, the evidence is definitely there that mind over matter. And so my hope is that we get to the point that, that it's just accepted, as it was in many cultures probably before. I have to say, I haven't researched them all, but, I know about a few where it's really like it's a medicine to the mind that really creates its health in the body again.
This is what I've been writing. Most of my books I spent 18 months to 2 years to research that I read. This book I've been writing for 9 years. It's called Quantum Human, because I wasn't quite ready to finish it. Now I'm finishing it. And this is what it's all about. It's about the science of today, not the science of yesterday, not holistic or alternative or all this nonsense we've done in the past. It's really the best of the best. And it really is based upon your consciousness. It's the wisdom and consciousness period of well-being we're in at this point. And what will determine individual futures and humanity's future is how well we perceive our capacity and how committed we are to that capacity. Do you follow? And
Yes.
I believe that we are poised at this point to transition from an area that we have suffered for a very long time to an area where we are all going to thrive, that humanity will liberate themselves from their fears. And their fears come from your dependency, which comes from modern society's inability to succeed without you being dependent on somebody else. I'm a big fan of capitalism versus socialism, but the reality is the capitalist model basically says, I need to pay you for my economy, my society to exist. That's the plan right there. That's the whole plan. The new society will be, what is it that I can contribute? What is it you can contribute? And how can we exchange that contribution? How can we grow together? How can we not be sustaining, but be beyond sustaining and thriving together? How can we make the world a better place, not for me and my family and my country? Oh, let's be national. How do we make the world a better place for everyone? So we don't have to watch on television starving children and they're asking us with money, please pay for them. That should not be happening in 2024. We shouldn't have wars. In Europe, as we speak, there's a raging war going on, and children and babies and women and men are being killed.
Yeah.
Because people who don't know themselves strike out at others because they want everyone, as we said 18 minutes ago, to be as miserable as they are. Wouldn't it be nice if we don't want anyone to be miserable? We want everyone to be as happy as we are?
Amazing. Would be amazing.
That's where we're heading, brother. We're going to head there or we're not going to make it. I think we're going to head there.
I noted a question down, which is, I think you almost answered, but I just double checked with you because I was thinking like, you see so many different modalities, where we're heading, what's coming, what will stick and so on. But if I put one and one together, it will be related to our mental and emotional state, right? Like maybe actually thinking about it, ice baths would be one of those things that, yes, there are physical, benefits to the body, but the breathing and the focus on yourself, the quieting the mind and so on is probably actually the dominant effect that really makes a difference. Right.
So we have this energy medicine department. I lived in Europe. I lived in Denmark and Switzerland back in the 70s. And I learned a lot of respect for the tradition of traditional medicine there. And I was very blessed. I ran the original Living Food Center in Denmark. It was started more than a century ago by Dr. Christine Nolfi, who healed on raw plant foods her breast cancer. And I helped Dr. Christian Schaller in Geneva, Switzerland, put together Foundation Soleil. It was very advanced. It was an amazing experience for me. And it was sort of a spiritual intervention for me, this all happened. And when I came back to the States, I met a lot of people like Hans Nieper when I was over there and others. And they were talking about things I never really, at least, heard of here in my world, in the United States, about how the transition from consciousness to biological healing was more important than anything else. So I, in 1980, created the first energy medicine department. I think it's sadly one of the only ones in the world in a center like this. And there are equipment. Back about 15 years ago, with our cancer people, we worked with Harvard on a machine called Newcom that does exactly what you just said. It actually takes your fight and flight out of your head, reprograms the neuron functions of your brain, puts you in what was called by Benson at Harvard back 50 years ago, the respiration response, and gets you in tune with when you were in the mother's womb in water floating upside down for 9 months. Now, when you do that, when you liberate yourself at that point, you can actually clean the slate, take the blackboard, clean all of the crap off the blackboard, and reestablish your destiny, your direction, your reality at that point. You can rewrite the book. Maybe you don't like the book you wrote so far and you rewrite it. And now there's newer technologies we have called Brain Tap. That's phenomenal. And what's great, the older ones were thousands. Now these are hundreds of dollars. Anyone can afford them. They hook up to your phones and you can walk around with these things and they put you into deep states of thought. My book from last year, The Self-Healing Diet, speaks about meta studies. You know, I'm a big believer in meta studies because even studies I quote, many of them were corrupted. I just choose to quote them. Somebody came in with a checkbook. Somebody comes in with a checkbook and says, here's what I want you to study at the University of Hamburg or Oxford or wherever it is. That's how research is done. Somebody dressed like me in a Learjet comes in, by the way, with a big check and says, here's what I want you to do. So years ago, those of us who are serious in science started to realize, hey, wait a minute. There may be 100 studies done on one subject. And the good news is there may be 100 different results. Same thing, they looked at 100 different opinions on that thing. But the good news is if you get statisticians to go in and look, they're going to find out all 100 found that this to be true. So we've got to extrapolate from a lot of studies, that's called meta studies, what really is true. And then we've got to say, here's what science really means. Because if you pay somebody to have an outcome, guess what? That's what the outcome is going to be if you want to keep a job in science. So in this, we looked at 15 meta studies on consciousness. And the amazing thing is they concluded that 5 minutes of deep contemplation, meditation, or prayer, didn't matter what, by the way, just different names for different things, that put you into a deep state, your immune system increased by 40% activity. Now think about that. I can't do that with any supplement. I can't do that with food. But in 5 minutes, I could actually get your immune system to fight the virus or to fight the bacteria or to fight the emotional state that you're having. In 5 minutes. That is your power mechanism. That's your God self coming out. That's your connecting to the universe, the photonic universe that you and I come from, little particles that make us who we are, that we think of ourselves in flesh and blood. We're electromagnetic frequencies. And to tune into that frequency and amplify it, put it up, can put so much light into your body that your psychology and biology will heal. Not maybe, we see it here daily.
You know, and I think about what we have at hand at the moment, which is, you know, certainly a loose group, whatever, of you know, big pharmaceutical companies having an interest on particular studies out of all the ones that are done, maybe on a subject, but also on, you know, market share. And I get the mechanism. I get that some people in these organizations just do their job. Others don't know themselves and just do, you know, what they believe is good for their evolution and for their well-being, but meaning like dominating the globe, whatever it might be. How do you think this will go down of actually shifting this? Is this just like a more conscious society that just overrides it? Or will there, like, what do you think? I mean, it's details, but at the same time, it would be interesting, like, how is the path to a different future possible?
Well, it's pretty simple. And we have a lot of history on this. And it's going to happen, like it or not. So it's called economics. It's called economics. So that our world, current world, is based not where we're going to go. It's based upon money. Now, here's what we do know. In Germany, in France, in Sweden, in the United States, and in Canada, the number 3 killer is pharmaceutical drugs and medical health care. So let me repeat this to you. So this is not my opinion. This is data-based. There's nothing I will ever say that's not only not my opinion, but it's also data-based. I don't speak without data and science behind it. I just choose not to do that because it makes you penetrable. I don't want to be penetrable. I want to be solid, clear, honest, and transparent to people. So when you have something that's killing the population, number 3, in all of the developed world, that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. When they've done polls in my country, and I can't speak for Germany, but I'm sure it's similar, if not better, 60% of the population would choose not to do allopathic healthcare. They would rather do, if I said, would you rather do medicine or go to a witch doctor who spins you in a circle on a fan and you whistle Dixie, they'd choose a whistling Dixie. You follow me?
Yeah.
So you're starting to see where this is going. Now, a guy called Eisman at Harvard did a study that basically said that the overwhelming, unchangeable trend, meaning it's not going to change, is wellness. As a matter of fact, if you look this up, wellness has the potential to be the most powerful economic movement in the history of the human race. Think of what I'm saying here. So the odds are against them. Killing costs too much money. The people don't want it anymore. They'll do anything other than that. So now we have to be mature enough, wise enough, and not animalistic in what our offering will be next. Because don't think just because it's natural, it's good. There's a lot of shams in this, maybe more shams, because you don't even need the credentials to do this most of the time. Do you follow?
Yeah.
We have to be poised to be the things I just told you I want to be. Transparent, honest, data-based, factual, and don't make up stories. We don't have to make up stories. The universe and God, by the way, is doing everything perfectly fine. We just have to humble ourselves enough to watch what's going on and mimic it. That's it. We don't have to invent anything. We just have to mimic this thing. The other thing is, I sat at a panel yesterday. I was out lecturing yesterday, and there was a woman next to me who was a research scientist who had a revelation back 30 years ago and started to realize she had insights that were sort of weird. She wouldn't even tell people because she was a very intellectual PhD, and she started to have insight. And she thought I was going to go against her because I was speaking about a lot of database science. And I said, you would call this psychic ability. I don't call it psychic ability. I call it instinctual energy that you're having. And she said, well, when I talk to people and I can actually instinctually see what they have and I can touch them. We all have that within us. Do you follow? So how do we devalue something that doesn't hurt you and value something that kills you? That's what we're talking about. It doesn't make any sense. So the system is economically collapsing. It's already collapsed. We're putting Band-Aids on it. This is why they got desperate and they're creating pandemics and all of these other things. That's out of desperation at this point. And the fact is, we just have to be spiritually awake enough to present something that is pro-people, pro-humanity, not pro-profit. I'm not against profit, by the way, as long as profit is used in a particular way. Remember, I said I'd much rather be a capitalist than a socialist. Socialism is a great idea. When I was young, I was a socialist. I realized people don't do well with it because they get greedy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a problem with it.
Wow. So yeah, that's a huge insight. That's a really huge insight to actually see that the capital is not really the problem. It's more like where it's hitting. Okay. Yeah. So
you've heard this in your home country where people say money's a problem. And I always laugh. I say, money's a piece of paper. We have really ugly money. Everything's green with dead presidents on it. You have at least pretty money over there. Big one and the red one and the gold. But I said, money's an inanimate object. It's not bad. There's nothing bad about money. It's matter. Money feeds people. Money creates homes for people to live in. Money takes care of a lot of really good things. It's how you choose to perceive money. If you perceive money as your emotional fulfillment, it's going to be bad. Not any different in my mind of having sex with somebody you don't love. It feels really good at first, but then where's the fulfillment? Where's the fulfillment? It's about the same. And that's what people do. They're using money rather than self-fulfilled realization and truth, finding truth within themselves, harmony within themselves.
I would argue it's not that easy sometimes to actually get there. And in fact, I'm thinking about sort of so I've 4, almost 5 kids and nice and young, so it's an amazing bubble, oldest is only 9, then 5, and then we have twins that are 2. And what I found is that, yes, I have had phases in my life where I would say I felt similarly, but the consistency of joy that I have in my life now gets me to the point that a lot of ambitions that are outside of the family might be still there, but they are tempered to a more reasonable level. They're also more aligned with, what I believe to do. So, running a successful company is one thing, but if I can give to the community back and, and give back to the team that runs this company ultimately, that now is way more important than it used to be. And so I guess my angle and my question that I try to create out of this is, how do you get people in this heart space, in this gratefulness, to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which I would argue I only started to see really with 35, when I had a really stable relationship with one that I really loved and saw a future with this person, and then, creating children and a cycle of friends around that really means this is enough. Like, I don't need to invade the country next door if I would be a dictator to feel good. I'm happy where we are right now. So if someone who is not there, how do you get them on the path to that?
Well, it's a beautiful question. It's a very, very fair and good question. One of my favorite writers, he got a lot more credit than he was due. His wife did a lot of the work, was an Austrian called Erikson. And Erikson was really the father of modern psychology. And he talked about the phases of life. And so I'll remind some of the listeners now, pick up his work because it was brilliant. And he said, who we are between 1 and 9 is something, and 9 and 15 is something, and 15 and 25, I forget the exact numbers. But to answer your question, you're in a wonderful phase where you're having the joy of life, the joy of responsibility. Your connectivity to the universe is manifested in your 4 and almost 5 children. And you are given a beautiful gift of love. You are being loved unquestionably. You are the father, you're the man, you're the husband, and you want that to happen. And you are so fulfilled with that. But I will talk out of experience, those children are going to leave the nest. And who are you then? That's the question. Who are you then at that point?
Right. An empty nester.
Empty nester. And the women, this affects more than the men, but it affected me. I was really happy and proud to be a man and a father and all of those things. It made me a happy, happy guy. I'm very family oriented, even in the work I do, the people here and the people I work with. But more importantly, you'll go through phases. You're in a wonderful phase now where you're producing sane human beings to go into the world and make it a better place. Sane human beings to go into the world and make it a better place. That's a pretty important job. And you're doing it showing love. You don't have to teach a lot. You just have to prove a lot. You have to prove what a man should do for the woman, what a man should do to successfully support the woman. And by the way, humble yourself and allow the woman to lead the family. You're not a nester. Men are not nesters. For up to us, we're peacocks. We'd walk all over the place not having a nest. So in your house, the woman has to prevail. You can basically have the strength and the masculinity which the household needs, but the woman prevails in the nest and should prevail in the nest. Now, in the next phase, when the children are gone, hopefully they're spreading the joy they saw at your family with your wife and you. They're not pretending. They're not watching sex movies and thinking that's it. They're watching authentic love, the real love story they watch. And so who they attract, hopefully, into their life will be the same. And now we're going to start perpetuating a new species that, by the way, thinks love's normal and abuse is not normal and weirdness is not normal and hatred is not normal. That's how you change the world. But then you're going to get to a phase like I'm going into the next. I'm a grandfather. I have 8 grandchildren.
Wow.
It's a wonderful, wonderful time. I never, I heard about this when I was younger and say, yeah. Now I realize it's sort of like your legacy. Like the universe is saying to you now, yeah, you're going to go pretty soon. You're not going to be here much longer. The book that's coming out next month is How to Live to 120. I hope I do. If I die at 119, they're going to say, see that? It didn't work.
It was wrong.
But even if I don't, it's
completely wrong.
Yeah. But the next phase I'm going into is you see this in tribal groups. So I visited tribes that commonly lived beyond 100. And the wiser woman, the wiser man. And in these tribes, by the way, the woman and men were relished the same. It's not the same as our society. My wife is Swedish. It's a very unique society. We talk about equality. The only one I've seen in the West that may have a little bit of that is Sweden. You know, there the paternity leave is half the time the men take the paternity leave. The men think it's normal to watch the children and take off work. You know, here, forget it. If that happened, you'd have to shoot the guy and drag him into the house. And probably Germany, it's the same. And we have this machivo ideology. But the next phase is going to be you're the sage. Not to say we're all sages, but you have a wisdom. You've been through the children. You've been through the grandchildren. You are now at a place you're liberated to actually express yourself. And that's when you get back to where you were when you were 20. 20, you had the desire to change the world, not the capacity. When you're in your 70s, you have the capacity to change the world. Just maintain your well-being so you have the vitality to do it too. So what I choose to do in my 80s, 90s, and beyond is to change the world with the vitality level of a 20-year-old. And that's really what it should be.
Amazing. And the wisdom of a 70 or 80.
And the wisdom, you know, you get older. Not that you're smarter. By the way, Mozart did his great work when he was a baby boy. John Lennon and McCartney wrote at 16, 17 years old, wrote brilliant music. I mean, come on. You know, Tupac, do you ever listen to his stuff? He died when he was 20 years old at a gun.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good point.
Not to say that it's only wisdom we need. We need vitality and wisdom. And sadly, most people, by the time they're 50, 60 in our society, have no life, no light, no energy, no spiritual increment, that they're fading.
Yes.
It's a different.
Yes.
So it's for if we are really purporting, making believe that we're conscious people, we've got to be conscious at a level that we maintain the gift of life and the gratitude that you mentioned. How do you get the gratitude? By proving it, by maintaining your well-being, by being a kind, gentle person, by being a humanitarian. There's a wonderful movie out right now that one of our alumnus did, Anthony Hopkins. And it's a true story about an English guy who went to Czechoslovakia just before Hitler took it over. And he saved the lives of 669 people. In that theater we watched, we cried in there. Because, you know, there's nobody that acts like Anthony Hopkins. There's not a role that he's ever done that you don't believe that's who he is. I mean, that's it. And he's just as beautiful a man, by the way, as he is an actor. And he's at that point, he's in his 80s now, that he's that wisdom carrier. He's that wisdom carrier. But that movie is about what we all should be like. And it's true. And what happened is that he sort of forgot he did this and got older, and he was playing an 80-year-old man in this. He was still in England, and his wife said, let's throw out all this stuff. And he was cleaning out the garage and cleaning out the basement and all. And he started to look at this and remember what he did 50, 60 years earlier in 1938, 1939. And it brought back a lot of fond memories and how wonderful his colleagues were living that so brave. These English people living in Czechoslovakia and fighting the Nazis to save these little kids, not all Jewish, but mostly Jewish kids, but, you know, artists, homosexuals, everyone was beaten to the ground by this fucking idiot. And the reality is somebody got a hold of the story, and there was, I guess, a big show. I didn't know about this in 1987 in England, and they invited him on the show. And don't you know, the entire audience were either the children or the people he had saved that he hadn't seen since 1939. I mean, this is where we are as a human race. We are great human people. We can do loving, wonderful things, support one another, not only as men and as fathers, but as carriers of the torch of God. And I mean the real God, not the religious God that they want you to pay off somehow. The God that's in your heart, the God that's in your soul, the God that's in the world, the God that takes care of it, the energy field that makes you who you are. That's who we really are. And we can do that just by realizing that we don't have to work hard. We just have to tap into the universe.
Anthony Hopkins was talking about that. I saw a short clip with him yesterday talking basically about believing in whatever you want. And even to the point, he said, like, even if you don't believe, still pretend you believe that it will
Exactly.
happen. And it will,
Exactly.
which is like the soul manifestation thing. It's like, mind over matter again, which lots of people, also, well-known people or people with a lot of public exposure talk about more and more, simply because I guess that was their path, which is, to me, the only path really to get anywhere. Anything else is sort of like,
Well, the
yeah,
great
wouldn't be
scientist in this today is Bruce Lipton.
good.
I know. Bruce Lipton's a great scientist, and that's the story we told earlier, where he said you can't say I'm going to get better. You say I am better. Going to get better gives you room to screw around. No, no going to. That means I'll do it tomorrow. You'll procrastinate. No, you are better now. This is how we go. And so, I like the showmanship of Joe Dispenza. He's a great showman. He gets out there and shows. So you need those people. You need the Hollywood approach to this stuff too. And my good friend, doctor, not doctor. He's not a doctor. He should be a doctor. Robbins, Tony. When Tony was a baby boy in his 20s, he had people walking across 1,500-degree hot coals. Now, how do you do that without being burned?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. How you do it is you believe in yourself. It's not believing in a system. You got to believe in yourself and believe you're God and believe you have the strength and believe you have the power and believe you have the ability to do anything you want to do and with no limitation. And that's what a human being really is.
Sometimes there are quite a few, I guess, avenue and opportunities that you can offer someone else. I think it's a super common question that you would get asked. Like, my wife has this, my friend has this, and so on. How do I get them to drink the wheatgrass juice, to do the meditation, to do this? Like, do they really have to suffer until they can't bear and say, like, okay, do anything to be better? Like, have you seen anything that, lures them in a positive way and say, like, no, I want to be part of this? Like, do you have a couple of tricks? Because I always think, like, look, the answers are there. It's just that, we are perception-wise and framework-wise where we are. How do we get that leap into another reality? How do we make it easier for people without being a preacher and saying, no, you have to, because that doesn't
It's an incredibly important question, and it's a hard one to answer. And even after 54 years of working with 300,000 people all over the world, I don't know if I have the exact answer, but here's the answer. Here's the answer I'll give you. That many times I'm given an opportunity to do a 3-day conference. So I start on Friday night, do all day Saturday, do part of Sunday, and they've listened to Brian for 40 hours, 30 hours, whatever it is. But in the audience, I quite often have somebody that healed cancer or multiple sclerosis or psychological disorders or whatever it may be. Their 10 seconds of standing up is more important than my 30 or 40 hours of lecturing to people. So what we need is to find relatable experiences that people can actually say, I can do that. When Brian says, oh, he's a doctor, he's this, he's been doing this forever, of course he's the director of Hippocrates, that's human nature, of course. Of course, Brian won't lie, but the reality is they expect me to lie, and they would assume I would lie, and yes, that's what I should be doing if I was like everyone else. But Joe or Mary or Sally or Paul, who had to do what this person needs to do, is relatable. So that's probably the most of all the leveling I could do. Number two, this is why everyone that comes here gets psychotherapy. So if people do not debulk the burdens, take away the blockages, the fears, the traumas in their life, they will never love and respect themselves enough to do the maximum best for themselves. Never love and respect themselves to do the maximum, the top, the best they can for themselves. So when you're with the wife or the husband or the friend or the relatives, some of my mother's dead, my brother died. They could have come and lived with me for free. They chose not to. Their perception was their life was tough, that they were incapable of loving something that was good for them. Do you follow? So even my own family couldn't do this. So it's not an easy proposition.
Painful.
So yeah, it's a painful thing. So the situation is you hope that person has an ability to understand that if they want to do something and they don't have the capacity to do it, what is it I can do to help you do that? Not preach at you, yell at you about it. But how can I help you? How can I facilitate you to do that? And introducing them to Mary, who healed the disease, or Mary, who, by the way, looks like she's 20 years younger than Sally, who you're trying to get to do this. Pretty impressive shit, you know. I mean, looks. We have a very shallow society, so looks work a lot. But people come to me all the time. Look at that full head of hair you have. They don't give a shit if I was walking on water just because I have hair. people are weird, you know. So these are the things that people look at. These are the things people look at. So that's it. The other thing is when you in fact come to a point, a crisis, like you said, do we have to almost be dead to do something? And the answer is yes, most of the time. People would not, you know, there's two kinds of people that come here, frightened and enlightened. And most people that come here are frightened. Some doctor or many doctors have said you're going to die. Now we have Dr. Google. Now you get on, if you don't think you're going to die, you'll find something you're going to die from, even if it's not real. So everyone's afraid of dying and suffering at this point. You have a handful of people, not maybe less than 5%, that are conscious. They got to a point and said, look, my life, you know, I've done everything I can possibly do, but I want to go one step more. So they want the guidance, they want the support, they want the love. And some of these people are very courageous. They don't even know what we are, and they just show up here because of this 70-year reputation, international reputation of people coming here and transforming their life. There's a wonderful film out on YouTube now that the listeners may want to watch. It was well done. A young man embedded himself in here for 2 years. And if I were producing the film, I couldn't have done 10% as well as him. So he figured out what we were better than me, who created this, figured out who we are, which is wonderful. So it's called Wellness.
Yes.
The Journey to Transformation. So just get on YouTube, put it in, Wellness, A Journey to Transformation. And it shows you what happens when people submit themselves to themselves. Not submit themselves to Hippocrates or what I'm saying or to what I wrote. None of that really matters. You've got to internalize that stuff. My great teachers are a wide variety of teachers. You know, not just the ones that we all know, like Socrates, who were one of my favorite, or Hippocrates, but my wife, my children. You said, you can only name the group that taught you the most. My children, my 4 children. Now my grandchildren have taught me the most. They didn't take any bullshit. They shot me down when I lied and I exaggerated. They told me I was full of crap. You know?
Yeah.
They didn't take any prisoners. So these are the things. And why we have partnerships, and I'll quote something now on the latest science, is because we need to be challenged. Your wife needs to have the freedom to tell you when you can improve in a loving, respectful way, and you rightfully can do the same. You have to be that example for the children. But, I'm so proud of the science community. We slowly get better. So we all know the longest living people are on plant-based diets and exercise like fiends. That's, you know what they've added now recently? Relationships, community.
Yes, right.
I'm so happy to see that because, we know 2 facts. That people who have been lonely chronically throughout life, listen to this, die on an average 15 years sooner than the rest of the population. I'll repeat this so you don't miss what I said.
Yes.
So that's like smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. So people who are, from the time you're young, you never had friends, you never got close, you never had somebody you could speak to openly, and they could counsel you in some way, a friend or a family member, die 15 years sooner. After the ripe young age of 65, if you don't have 3 close friends, confidants as we call them, you'll die 7.5 to 8 years sooner than the rest of the population. Now that's pretty intense data. So
why is that, you think?
What is that message? The message is we need each other. We're interdependent. Yes, we want to be independent, but we want to be interdependent. I need you. You need me. I need my friends. I need my work. I need communication. I need my child to tell me I'm wrong. I need somebody who I've never met before to challenge what I say. I need all of those things. And I need to be humble enough to thank God for those things.
Yeah. I mean, think about, I'm sure you know couples that, one person died,
Oh,
normally
yeah.
when they're older. I think in young age might not happen as much, but I can certainly see people 70 upwards, when one person dies, within a year, the second one
Oh, yeah.
gives up. Like, it feels really like that. And to your point, if I think about these relationships, and if you don't have them, you die 15 years earlier, I guess we're not talking necessarily about acquaintance, although it might work as well. If I think about Amelie, the movie Amelie, if you go down and you have a great relationship with your vegetable grocer, and it just gives you the feeling of community, of belonging somewhere, of having the little banter per day, that might be already enough to lift you. But I can see, like, good friends give you really meaning in life, and give you really that heart opening connection on a regular basis, right?
And we're not talking about befriending somebody on the internet. We're talking
No.
about an authentic, genuine relationship where, and men are really bad at this. At least women speak to one another. If you ask a
Yeah.
man, his two legs could be falling off. He could have an arrow in his back. And if you ask him how he's doing, okay. So we don't, men are not wired to speak to other men. We always pretend. Women are better at this than us, but men have to loosen up. And you're exactly right. We don't have to have where you're intimate with the person sexually or emotionally, but you have to have somebody that you can trust, that you can say things to, that is going to reverberate and talk back to you.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. And I know so many examples of the opposite. Like, maybe the wife in her 70s is still quite social, whereas he stopped working, lost most of his connections because they were all at work, and he
Yes.
was just tinkering at his workshop, which he might love, but there's certainly no social connection there. And question is that the reason
That's
why
well,
women?
that's called retirement. I mean,
Isn't that
I
amazing?
never plan on retiring. I mean, the
No,
reality is, who retires are people that are like that 80% that hate what they do.
that's it. That's exactly right. The rest, why would they? There's no
Yeah.
need.
I'd want to
You
retire
with
if
your
I hated
passion.
what I did too. I want to quit life if I hated what I did.
Yes.
So this is it.
Yes.
So it's been a pleasure to speak to you, and
It has been.
just keep up your good work and spreading what I call important knowledge to the population of the world that's getting unfortunate information on an ongoing basis. One of the programs I'm now showing is we had a former KGB guy leave Russia way back in the late 70s, and they interviewed him about 40 years ago. And he said, all of the West is worried about espionage. He said, we don't spend any time or money on espionage, maybe 15%. We spend time on propaganda. And he said, what we do is we bring down societies by getting everyone so confused and so lost that whatever we tell them, they're going to believe. And so don't believe what you're being told. Listen to your heart. It's a lot wiser than news channels and even me.
Love it. I love your positive message. It's amazing that after all that time, you, if anything, have strengthened your conviction, and also, your message that you can see really there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it gets better all the time. I think it's beautiful, and it's a testimony to all your work and the success that we have with it, that you actually got the wrong end of the stick to what actually makes a human, race vibrant and sustainable. So thanks so much for making time. I really appreciate it. Love your message.
Take care of yourself.
We hope you got a lot out of today's inspiring conversation. please share this episode with someone you know needs to hear it. Whether they are a seasoned health expert or just beginning their wellness journey, these stories of remarkable transformation, success, and valuable insights will certainly help empower more people. Until next time, have the best life ever.